I'm going to start recording. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group. My name is Cory Anderson. I'm the president of the group, and I'm going to tell you basically about a little bit about the group and then talk about what to expect for today. So here's our agenda. First of all, we'll have our welcome and general business. That's what we're doing right now. And then we're going to hear from our meeting sponsor today for about 10 minutes. That is NetSuite. After that, we will get into the main presentation today. Our main presentation is about month-end close and bank recs, and that is presented by Dana Larson of Eide Bailly. And then we'll have a short break, and then the second part of the presentation will be allocations after that. Then after the main presentation, we will have some tips and tricks presented by Mark Bassnagel from RSM. And then we will have an open forum afterwards. And after the tips and tricks, we will cut off the GoToMeeting broadcast, and we will just have the open forum here in this room. So let me move on here. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you to Coda Coffee. Coda Coffee is giving us a very, very good rate on the coffee. They're donating sometimes and giving us a good rate other times, and so we should have Coda Coffee, I think, for pretty much every meeting going forward now, and it's very good coffee, so thank you for being here, Coda Coffee. That didn't work. Okay. All right. Something's happening. So first of all, talk about our membership. We have currently 860 members, part of the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group. The membership for the user group is free, and I don't know what is happening here. Maybe I'll close that one. Competing PowerPoint presentations. Okay. So anyway, the membership is free. If you sign up to be a member at our website, rmnsug.org, that ensures that you get notifications of our upcoming meetings and events. It gives you the ability to attend our meetings remotely. It also gives you access to our LinkedIn forum. Our LinkedIn forum is a private group so that it doesn't get very spammy. And so if you have tips or tricks or questions or challenges that you're coming upon, this is a good place to post those answers. We try and monitor that. We've discovered that there's a little bit of a problem with LinkedIn since they were acquired by Microsoft of sending email notifications out to people, so you may not get those notifications anymore. So if you do post a question, make sure you go back and follow up and look at it, because we're going to try and answer that question or help you out, or hopefully somebody can. Our membership also gives you access to a $400 discount to SuiteWorld. That's the same discount as the early bird pricing for SuiteWorld, but we get it later after the early bird. So if you didn't do the early bird and you still want to go, then we can get you a discount as well. And brand new, for this is our first meeting, we are offering CPE credits, but you'll need to be a member to be able to get those credits. And I'll talk about that a little bit more here as we go. So our user group forum, as I mentioned, is a private forum. We have 389 members right now. The purpose is to support our fellow members with questions and answers. We can follow up from Q&A from our meetings. We also post our announcements there. You can post job openings. We post when our presentations and meeting notes are available. We post on there that they are available, and then you can go to the website to find that information. And as a reminder, evaluations for this meeting will be emailed to you today. And if you are a walk-in attendee, please make sure that you register or RSVP at the iPad in the front of the back of the room there. And that way we can send you that evaluation. We read those evaluations. If there's problems or ideas or anything that comes up, we're always trying to make our user group experience better. Also, please register for events using the same email as your membership record, so you don't end up with two memberships. As a user group, we use a production NetSuite account. to run the user group, and so if you have 2 different email addresses that you're signing up for, you'll end up with 2 customer records, and then you'll just end up getting multiple emails from us. So please use that same email, and then also please RSVP as early as possible for the meetings. If you know you're going to be here, we use the meeting RSVP count on the Monday 2 days ago to figure out how much food to order. So please RSVP in advance. So we have a few changes to the board of directors that I want to talk about, just so that everybody's aware. About 2 months ago, I made a move, and I'm now working with Eide Bailly. And because of that, NetSuite regulations for user groups says that a user group board of directors cannot have more than 1 person from any one company on that board of directors. So Dana Larson is also with Eide Bailly, and so because of that, Dana Larson is stepping down as our speaker chair. She won't be a stranger to our meetings. She'll still be here, and she'll be presenting occasionally for us as well. But fortunately, we have a new speaker chair already, Mark Bassnagel from RSM, and I'll talk about him just in a minute here. I'll let you know what I found out about him. Just kidding. So I wanted to say a special thank you to Dana. Dana has been a member of the user group since 2009. That's according to your customer record in our NetSuite account. And that was the first time you RSVP'd for a meeting. And then she's been on the board of directors since 2014. So she's been on a very important part of the user group for a very long time. So I'd like to give her a round of applause, say thank you. But like I said, she won't be a stranger. So with that, I'd like to welcome Mark Bassnagel. Mark is the NetSuite implementation supervisor at RSM US, and he has been a user group member since 2016. He was previously with HomeAdvisor, who has been a NetSuite company for a while, and using NetSuite for some time. And also, he is now the 2nd CPA on our board of directors, which is very cool. So Mark, could you just stand up real quick so everybody can see who you are? Thank you. So welcome, Mark. So this is our new lineup for our board of directors. We have Margie Comino. She's in the back. She's with PlantScan. She is our sponsorship and membership chair. Where'd she go? Oh, yeah, she's sitting at the front table up there. And then we have Mark, our new speaker chair. Mike Kackline from Vertifor. He is our communications chair. He's sitting at the front desk as well. And then we have Mariah Toms as our treasurer. And Mariah is the other CPA on our board. And Mariah just had a baby a few months ago. And so she has been on leave, but she is not leaving the board. When she comes back, she's still going to be an active member of the user group and the board. So I'd like to take a minute here. How many people here, this is your first time meeting? If you could raise your hand. Wow, that's at least a third of the room is your first time meeting. So we'll welcome all. Thank you for being here. And I'd also like to take a moment, if anybody has an announcement, a job posting, any announcements that you want to, I'll give you the opportunity to say something. Anybody?
I'm Kristen from Disney Solutions, and we are an NetSuite consulting firm. So we are hiring consultants at kind of the associate level up to the consultant level.
Okay, so that's Kristen from Disney Solutions, hiring all levels of NetSuite consulting from entry level up to lead consultants. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah.
Okay, my name is Justin Harris, Director of Finance for Leadership. We're a digital asset exchange located in Denver. We're currently building we operate with NetSuite,
and it's Shapeshift? Shapeshift looking for a controller. Have you posted that on the LinkedIn forum yet? I don't think you have.
I have not.
You should do that. Yep. Anybody else? Okay. All right, we'll move on. So we are very excited to be able to offer CPE credits for at least this meeting. We are going to try and offer CPE credits for as many user group meetings as possible, but there are requirements around that. The topic has to be approved, the speaker has to be approved, and so we're going to try and offer CPE credits for each of our meetings, but we may not be able to every single time. The CPE credits are being sponsored by Eide Bailly, so our admin staff will be facilitating the getting the credits to all of the applicants here. If you haven't already, pick up a keyword tracker form at the front desk there. We'll have 2 different keywords throughout the meeting. You need to know what those keywords are, and then you can write them down on that sheet. And then there's a SurveyMonkey link where you'll go to fill out an application for those CPE credits, and then you will need those keywords to qualify. Okay, a couple more forms. So the credits, you must be present to earn those credits. I know that there are possibilities of remote viewers, but at this point we're only prepared to do it for in-person attendees. So we're going to have 2 credits available for this meeting because it's about a 2-hour presentation, so that fits the requirements. You must be present. Credits will be issued within 14 days, and you have 7 days to go to the SurveyMonkey link to fill out the form and request the credits. If you have any questions about that, feel free to come and ask me about it at any point during the meeting. So our first keyword for our CPE credits is sunshine. And I believe Dana will give us the second keyword later in the meeting. I wasn't aware there was a price, but that's good. So if you have tips and tricks of your own, please feel free to submit a tip or trick through the Contact Us form at rmnsug.org. And also, if you would be interested in presenting at a future meeting, we would love to have various speakers present a tip and trick. And then if you're also interested in potentially presenting a main meeting, we're open to talking to you about that as well. But if you don't want to present at all, you can still submit a tip or trick, something, an aha moment or something you figured out that took a long time to figure out. We are always looking for those things to share with the group. So let's talk a little bit about our meeting sponsorship. Membership to the user group is free to you. The cost of our meetings is supported by 2 levels of sponsorship. We have a Suite App sponsor and a breakfast sponsor. Suite App sponsors must be available through suiteapp.com, and breakfast sponsors must offer NetSuite consulting services and have certified NetSuite consultants on staff. And I forgot to update that. That may not be true. But our goal of offering these 2 levels of sponsorship is to give you ideas of the types of applications that can add on to your NetSuite instance, but then also give you the ability to see and talk to some consultants here in town. So there's several consulting firms around town, and they will typically rotate through sponsoring our breakfast. Our breakfast sponsor today is Blue Horseshoe Solutions. They're in the back of the room. So if you have a minute, you can stop by and talk to them and see what they're all about. And then I believe they also have some giveaways today. So if you want to drop your business card in the basket, there's a couple of growlers that we will be giving away, or they will be giving away at the end of the meeting. We'll do a drawing to see who gets those. So our Suite App sponsors, I believe we're booked through 2020 at this point. We do have some breakfast sponsorship opportunities. I know that we are booking into 2021 for our breakfast sponsorship. And so if you or your company wants to sponsor a meeting, you can go to rmnsug.org/sponsorship, and that'll tell you about what is involved in sponsoring a meeting. So our upcoming meetings, next meeting, September of this year, is inventory management and also our 2019.2 update. So in the update, we'll talk about some of the cool new features that are coming in 19.2. And then inventory management, I will be presenting and co-presenting with Margie for that meeting. And Margie is more in the manufacturing side of the inventory world, and I'll be talking more about physical inventory and things like that. November 2019, we're planning on doing a module overview. The module overview is going to talk about the bundles and things that you can plug into NetSuite, the different modules, the different aspects of pieces that you can use in NetSuite, what they come with, what some of the different options are. It gives people an idea of some of the solutions that NetSuite offers that you don't necessarily have to go to a suite app to do. And so we'll talk about that in November. In January, we will go through Suite Analytics. Suite Analytics is the new workbook feature that is not really replacing saved searches and reports, but more augmenting those, giving us some pivot chart capabilities and a lot deeper multi-level joins and really great functionality. So Suite Analytics, we feel like it's a good time to start talking about that. Probably wanted to put it in this year, but our schedule was already full, so we're going to hit it first thing next year. In March, we'll have our 20.1 update, and then not sure about the actual meeting yet. And then May next year, we're going to talk about workflows, aka SuiteFlow, and then also the SuiteWorld update, because SuiteWorld will have ended then at that point. So I'd like to say thank you to our sponsors. Our Suite App sponsor today is NetStock, who you'll hear from in just a moment. And then our breakfast sponsor, again, is Blue Horseshoe, back in the corner. And NetStock also has a giveaway today. There will be a drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card, and that gift card will be mailed to you. So there's a basket also at the NetStock table you can drop your business card into, and we'll do a drawing for the Amazon gift card as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Russ Graff from NetStock.
Like my subliminal advertising while you were trying.
Yeah, I saw that. That was now I got to find.
Splash. Now you're never going to forget the name NetStock.
Sorry, now I got to bring it back up. That was good subliminal.
Not sure if I need a microphone or not. I've got a pretty loud voice. You guys hear me in the back okay? Okay.
Beginning and away you go.
All right. Thank you, Cory, and thanks to the user group board allowing me to sponsor. Took a while to get on the list. You guys are very popular, so I think I've been attending a couple of these since a year and a half maybe, and finally got an opportunity to speak to you. So hopefully this is of value to you. So NetSuite, of course, is such a dominant player in the marketplace. We picked up our integration to NetSuite about 3 years ago, is when we earned our badge. We're known as a hybrid suite app, right? So we're a built for NetSuite badged product on the suiteapp.com site. But as a hybrid application, that means we're kind of external to the NetSuite database. And we also integrate with a bunch of other ERPs. But it's a cloud-based application, and our purpose is really about inventory, demand planning, replenishment, and so forth. So if you guys don't have inventory in your organizations, don't feel guilty about working on your phones or doing email right now. But if you do have inventory, I'd love your attention just for a few minutes here. So even though we're relatively new to the NetSuite space, we've been around since 2010, and you can see that we're a global company and we've got lots of companies using the application. So even though we may not be as well known in the NetSuite space, we're really a dominant player globally in this area of demand planning, replenishment, forecasting of inventory, and so forth. So we've got over 1,400 companies around the globe using us. About 800 of those are in North America. So we've got lots of users managing a ton of inventory, and of course inventory-based businesses, right? Distribution, manufacturing, e-commerce, other retailer environments, where there's this challenge that's been an ongoing constant challenge for any inventory-based company. How do I have enough inventory to meet my customer demand but not too much that I've got warehouses overflowing, tying up capital and so forth. It's a balancing act that's always been in existence, and that's what we address. Whether you have a planning tool or not today, you're doing something. And most of the cases, what we're doing is we're replacing Excel. Most people are trying to do some sort of an Excel semi-automated process, and they think they're really unique, so they've got to write these custom spreadsheets, and they end up with massive worksheets and spreadsheets with all kinds of formulas, which really become very challenging. We've done an entire series of blog posts and webinar content that lasts an hour just talking about the pitfalls of running this application, running that environment using a spreadsheet type tool. A number of different logos here, but this is one in particular. This guy at Kitchen Warehouse tried a number of different applications. Obviously, there's some competition out there. NetSuite has its own demand planning application. Some of you may be running that module, which is a branded NetSuite application. So there's some competition out there. My goal in the few minutes that I have with you today is not to necessarily sell you anything or talk you into buying our product, but really just to be aware of who we are, and that if you're in the marketplace, if you've got some pain in that area, maybe add us to the list of folks that you want to evaluate and have a conversation with, and we would appreciate that. So the problem we solve is really a threefold value proposition, right? I want to have enough inventory that I don't stock out. That's the worst thing that can happen to me if I'm an inventory-based distribution manufacturing type company. If I run out of product today in today's environment, customer loyalty not being what it was, Amazon expectations being what they are in that consumer environment and our customer base, if I can't meet somebody's need, they're going to go somewhere else. And if they go somewhere else, I not only lose that sale, but I may lose that customer if they have a positive experience with a competitor. So it's the worst thing I can do. But I can't solve the problem by simply overbuying, because that has implications as well. If I've got too much inventory, I've got what we would call excess stock, more than I need to meet my demand. I've got cash tied up in my warehouse. It's just envision dollar bills stacked on the warehouse shelves, right? Not doing anything for your business. And there's actual hard carrying costs of managing that excess inventory. Insurance, taxes, got to count it, move it around, could get obsolete or damaged, those kinds of things. So there's some real challenges there. And unfortunately, the folks that are managing the buying planning process have a productivity challenge. You're getting yelled at by the sales guys when they run out. You're getting yelled at by the C-level guys when they've got too much on the balance sheet, right? So they're in a very stressful situation. And again, if they're dealing with inadequate tools like spreadsheets, they're running around the warehouse, putting out fires all the time. It's a very difficult environment. Instead of spending time doing what they should be doing, which is really tweaking the supply chain, negotiating better shipping rates, getting to know their vendors, negotiating price, all those things that really are higher value activities for those buyers and planners. Instead, they're spending their time messing with spreadsheets and trying to figure out circular errors and all those kinds of things. One of the things we like to point out is that where we fit in the grand scheme of things, and we think of inventory management as kind of a broad topic, usually where our minds go to is that top part, is the physical inventory control component, right? When we say the words inventory management, we think about all the transactions relating to pick, pack, ship, receiving, doing physical counts and so forth, typically using maybe some sort of barcode type application. Some of you may be RF Smart users, for example. We collaborate very nicely with RF Smart. We've done some joint marketing with them. I've got an ebook on our desk there that we did for last Suite World in combination and collaboration with RF Smart. So we don't do what they do. They do a very important piece, right? You've got to know how much you have and where it is and so forth. But it doesn't answer the other question related to inventory management, which is it the right stuff? Do I have the right level of product at the right place at the right time, again, to meet those customer demands without overburdening my environment? So that's where we fit. We bring in forecasting engines and ordering functionality and so forth. The folks that started NetStock 10 years ago as 4 founders all have decades of experience in this environment, typically with large multinationals. And so they've got very complex environments that they've gone in and done consulting projects, $1 million type projects, written applications, written algorithms for demand planning and forecasting. So a huge amount of domain knowledge. When they came together to build the NetStock app, we knew that the target market for us was actually now the middle market, small, medium-sized businesses, okay? Which had now just as much complexity in their supply chain as those big guys always had, but had terrible tools and nothing really to address it, right? So now they're buying product from overseas with long lead times. They're selling through omni-channel environments. They may be using 3PLs to help with their distribution network across geographies. They might be selling globally. So now all of a sudden there's all this complexity, and I'm a small, medium-sized business. I've got 20 people in my company, and I'm doing $5 million a year, and I've got $1 million worth of inventory, right? What do? I'll have to use a spreadsheet. And unfortunately, that's inadequate. So we saw that opportunity and we said, okay, but understanding that market and who those folks are that are running those systems, they might be wearing 2 or 3 hats in the organization as they grow. Maybe it's a former warehouse person that's now doing the buying, et cetera. So it was really critical from a design standpoint that the application be very easy to use and easy to deploy and inexpensive, right? Easy in, easy out. Let's see if we can make this work for you. So we do remote deployment. We're not coming on site with hourly consulting rates. There's a flat fee implementation that's all done remotely and very well done. And it's really geared towards answering these 2 key questions. What's gone wrong in my inventory? What's out of whack? And what do I need to order to get myself back into a proper position, right? So what that means is we're taking a status check every single day for every item in every location, real or virtual, that says, is the status okay? Meaning it's between its mins and maxes at the moment, and it's expected to stay there for the near future? Or do I have too much or not enough, or I'm about to run out, or I'm about to have too much? I've got forecasts that aren't performing as I expected. I've got suppliers that aren't delivering on time, or they're over delivering or delivering early. None of these are good things, right? They all mess with your supply chain. So what are all those different statuses? Bubble those up into a dashboard and expose those to the buyer and planner very quickly, as I can see exactly what's gone wrong, where do I need to spend my time and attention today? And not only that, but also prioritize those items. We do some
There's an online question. Does NetSuite give us the capability of allocating future inbound POs to future sales rather than keeping all SOs in one ATS bucket?
It doesn't do the allocation. The ERP is really better for the allocation purpose. That's a function they can perform, but we're going to help you buy at the right time to meet those allocations and requirements based on those delivery dates. Okay? Yeah, good question. So one of the things we'll do is classify all the items in our warehouse. This little graphical chart over here, everybody knows about ABC analysis. I'm ranking all my items by value, A being the highest value items and so forth. Typically that's an 80-20 rule model. We're also going to rank those same items by speed of movement or velocity, high, medium, and low. So now we end up with this 9-box color-coded matrix. It really helps us understand the nature of the items in our inventory, so we don't have to paint them all with the same broad brush, right? I can set policies and procedures and metrics and targets based on where my items are in my overall scheme of things. So in the upper right-hand corner, those gray items, high-value, fast-moving items, those are my bread and butter. Higher target fill rates, pay more attention to those, et cetera. The guys in the left and the red and lower left, low-value, slow-moving items. Maybe I wonder why I even bother stocking those. Maybe my vendors can manage those for me. Or if they're nuts and bolts for a manufacturing environment, maybe I buy them twice a year in bulk and put them in the corner of the warehouse. But now I can make some decisions based on the data and the presentation and the visibility of what's going on. And then the result of that is, again, proper investment service, and we've got that forecasting engine, 15 different algorithms that project that future demand and allow you to understand what the future looks like, projected out, time phased, and so forth. So last thing, the way we work, again, as a hybrid external app is we're grabbing data from the database typically every night. So we've done save searches and those kinds of things using the technology in NetSuite to go grab all the data we need. So that could be all the inventory files, sales order files, purchase order files, bills of materials files, because we do demand planning down from finished goods to 99 levels in a component bill of material. So we can understand all those environments, multi-warehouse, if I'm supplying from one warehouse to another in a central distribution environment, all those flows and data streams, demand streams are understood. We grab all that data, encrypt it, compress it, FTP, highly secured environment that we move the data up into our private cloud. Once we've got it, we do our number crunching and so forth. It takes 20 minutes maybe for the typical client. And then we present the data back in a dashboard that, again, exposes all that information to you. Says, okay, here's where I got a problem. Here's where I need to focus my energy today and keep my supply chain humming. And then the one thing we write back into the NetSuite database is an open purchase order. So on our side, we help you decide what to buy, when, and how much. We can help you fill containers and all kinds of things, make that decision, and then you create the open PO with a click of a button. You don't have to rekey all that information. So I'd love to chat with you at the back of the room, have more conversation if that's of interest to you. Again, we've got the drawing that Cory mentioned as well, and I think that's my 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
All right, give us just a moment to reconfigure here. Looks like Dana's already loaded up. You just need to do the mic.
Can you plug that in? If not, I think I'll make it. I think I'm all right.
Okay.
I just recorded.
We can
During the break, I can do it. Okay, Mike. Testing? No. All right. No.
Yeah.
And now?
Yeah.
Okay. You can hear me? Everybody? Okay. Let me put this somewhere. All right. Good morning. We're going to have so much fun with month-end close, bank recs, and allocations. Amazing you're here, because those are the things that are like what scare everybody, right? They strike fear into you. But first I wanted to ask, how many people here are actually part of the month-end close process? Wow. Okay. All right. So how many here can get it done in under 10 days? All right. How about 7? These are business days. 5. 4. Yeah, that's where we get a little. 3. Okay. All right. I think we found our limit right there. So for those of you who aren't part of the month-end close, you can get an idea of that. That's a driving factor, right, of closing. Oh, but I forgot. First, I was going to do a little drum solo for you over here, because that maybe I'll save that for when we need everyone to wake up. So this is our agenda today: month-end close, bank recs, and allocations. They all sort of go together. They're not in exactly the right order, because typically you would do the month-end close after your bank recs and your allocations, but I just decided to present them this way to give the big picture of the month-end close first, and then we'll look at the bank recs and the allocations. There's a lot of other things that go into month-end close, so please don't think this is everything, especially if you're not part of it. Understand that your accounting department is doing a lot more than what I'm showing today, but these were the 3 in the short time that we have. It was like, let's cover these as much as we can. So month-end close, my favorite. So all of you who do it know why, but it's essentially so that you close your books, so that if you've done any reporting to the public, to your owners, to shareholders, anything, it can't be changed. Because and I've been guilty of this with some small nonprofits I've worked with, where I didn't close the books. I did the 990. I come back later and it's like, wait a minute, the numbers don't tie to my 990 anymore. I forgot to close the books. And so I'm very guilty of, don't do what I tell you to do. So do what I say, not what I do. And I should caveat, I'm not a CPA, so don't, none of what you hear today can be taken as any kind of CPA advice, okay? Have to be really clear on that, because you are getting CPE credit, but it's just because of the topic, not because of my credentials. And so, but I do work at a firm that is full of CPAs, and I like to say I play one on TV. So all balance sheet accounts are verified and income statements are reviewed during the month-end close, because you want to make sure that what you're presenting. So essentially, in larger companies, they'll divide up your accounts, and they say, you go reconcile these 2, you go reconcile those 4. And often AP is one group, AR is doing one, inventory, and so then everybody comes together and says, okay, yeah, we're closed, it's all good. And like I said, 2 days to 30, hopefully not more than 30, because then you start stacking them up, right? 1 month to the next one. Best practice is 3 or 4. I mean, I don't think there's no shame in anything. I think under a week is great. It kind of depends on the pressure you're getting from whoever you're reporting to. There are vendors with products that help, like Flowcast and Blackline and others. And so if you're in an environment where the NetSuite system, you know, you're struggling to keep up with it, and you have all these outside Excel spreadsheets where you're trying to manage your close, just know that there are add-on products to help with that. NetSuite provides a checklist, and for each of these segments that I do today, we're going to go through some slides, because you'll get these slides afterwards. Then we're going to hop into NetSuite, look at it real time, and then we'll have time for questions. So it's going to be 3 cycles like that, just so you know it's not all going to be death by PowerPoint. So they provide a checklist to help you complete your month end, and it'll vary based on what modules and features you have turned on. So if you don't have inventory, you're not going to see the inventory related ones, and so it's hard to demo exactly what your month end close will be. The other thing is it's also not magic. Just because you check the boxes to say that you're closing, that's just to keep track of it. You really have to do stuff, all right? So this is no magic. And so you'll click on that icon when you get in there, review the tasks in the order listed, which is awfully nice. They give them to you in the order that you should be doing them. And then it'll say whether it's completed, in progress, or not started. It won't let you skip a task and say, oh, I'm going to come back to that later. It's going to force you to do them in the right order. You can't go and close the books in 1 month if you haven't the prior month, which makes sense because something you do the prior month could change this balance sheet forward. And so you have to do them in order. It's all very controlled. To start, you lock all of your transactions, and if you're in a One World account, you do that by subsidiary, which is really nice. Just as a side note, if you've got let's say three subsidiaries, and one of them super fast at closing AR and AP, and they don't want to keep it open while these 2 are working on theirs, you can close them by section so that once you know, yeah, everything's good, so the lock AR, AP, and payroll can happen in any order. So if AP comes to me as the controller and says, hey, AP's ready, they quickly lock it because something could happen, right? And change it, and you wanna lock it the minute you fix it and make sure it's good. So those 3 you can lock in any order. Now, and then anybody who has the permission to override the period restrictions, they can make changes in a locked period, not a closed period, but in a locked period. So it's very different. Once you lock it, it's like Adult Swim, kids out of the pool, we're gonna, lock this down, and then the controller goes in and makes those final touches and then closes the whole thing and locks it up. There are tasks dependent on your environment, like I talked about. You've got inventory tasks. The custom GL lines plugin will run. One World automated adjustments for intercompany. And again, some of these, even if you have One World, you might not have that turned on, but based on what features you've enabled, it'll do that. The multiple currencies where you restate your balances if they're in another currency. Intercompany eliminations, if you don't want to see, you want to get those eliminations in. By the way, just so everyone knows, that would be if company A sells to company B in a One World environment because maybe they're the manufacturer, company B does the selling. On the company A's books, you're going to see that product go out, and you're going to see some revenue from company B. And on company B, you're going to see some cost of purchasing those items, and then they're going to have revenue from selling it. You want to get rid of that revenue in company A and the cost in company B, because the original cost happened in A, the income happened in B, and that's what eliminations are. It sits in the middle and it bounces them out so that it does the opposite, debit and credit, so that when you push them all together, you don't see those transactions. So that's just a little sidelight and how eliminations work. And you can set that up to be automatic as part of your close. In One World, you can turn on automatic intercompany eliminations, and you tell the system which accounts you want to use, which accounts you want to eliminate. So that's a nice feature that was added a few years ago or something. I can't remember exactly, but create period end journals is a new one that came out, I believe, in 18.2. And what it is for those people who are used to seeing their income statement cleaned out basically at the end of a period and pushed over into the equity section of their balance sheet, so they show their net income over in retained earnings. In NetSuite, it never actually makes that journal entry. Older accounting systems used to, that would be the month-end close. You would go in and say, what's my bottom line income? And you'd push it over the balance sheet. NetSuite doesn't do that because it does the calculation for you in the background, and you never actually close out your income statement. But apparently some people liked that they liked having that journal entry, a physical journal entry doing that work. So that's what that create period end journals is. And they've recently updated that to include some of the classifications. The first time they turned it out, it didn't have department, location, class. You couldn't do anything with that, and now you can. So now I think it's more usable for people. And then GL audit numbering, it'll give a number to all of your transactions, but you have to do that as part of the close, because then everything stops and you can number them in order. And that would be so that an auditor can make sure that there was, it's like, is there a page missing in the notebooks? Remember the old ledgers? I'm really not that old, but they used to number them on the bottom so that if someone tore out a page, you wouldn't see that they're hiding something in their books, and that's what that GL audit numbering does. So once all of the tasks are complete, you can close. Now you can reopen a closed period. You have to have the override period restrictions permission to do it, and you can jump back. Let's say I'm in December. You can go all the way back to January and say, oh, I messed up. My year's not over though. I haven't given this data to anybody because I'm a year end kind of, that's when we're going to report. I want to go back to January and open that period. You can go all the way back and open that period. And it used to be then that you had to go through and close all, because it opens up all the periods, and then you have to go through and close each one manually, clicking all those boxes, task, 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 done. Now they have an allow quick close, and so if you have that preference enabled, you can close one or more accounting periods with a single click. So similar to the quick open, where you went all the way back, you can now do the quick close and have it come all the way forward. I will admit I haven't tried that one yet. So anyone here done that? Yeah, and was it okay? Okay, you just click on the close on the latest one. Okay, so it's just a click for each one instead of going through all of the tasks. Okay, great. So again, warning, and this was in the NetSuite suite answers, this doesn't actually do any of the tasks. So for example, if your currency, you change the valuation of your currency or something, you're still gonna have to go do that work, all right? So this is just if you know for a fact that whatever you changed back in January isn't gonna do anything in your February to November, then you can do the quick close. But it's not actually going out and running any of this, any of those tasks. If the allow non-GL changes box is checked on a period record, this is after it's closed, you can check this box. You can make changes to posting transactions that do not affect the general ledger. So you must have set up permission allow non-GL changes to make these changes. So in that case, let's say you wanted to put a memo on a journal entry. That doesn't change your GL. If you didn't have this checkbox checked, you wouldn't even be able to go and edit. There's no edit button on that journal anywhere. But if you have this open, you can click the edit button and you can add a memo. You can do anything that doesn't change your general ledger. All right. And I was noticing in the notes when I was looking this up that changing an address on a transaction is not considered a non-GL change. Does anybody know why? Taxes. So you could have a different sales tax if you change the ship to address or something like that. So sometimes things that you think don't have a GL impact, it won't let you change them, and you have to think, wait a minute, why would that change the GL? But you can also look in Suite Answers because they have a whole bunch of stuff out there. So now we're going to go ahead and get into the month-end close, and I have notes here so I remember which account I'm working in. Here we are in this is Dilly, one of our test and, oh yeah, make it bigger. There, oop, whoa. Tell me when, like that? Too small? One more up? Okay. All right, so the month-end close is done in the setup accounting down here in the manage accounting periods. Obviously, you've already done your fiscal calendars and all that by the time you get in here. Once you click on here, you'll see all of the years that you have open, and I happen to have 2018. You can of course collapse so that you're not looking at everything. Let's see, I'm going to show you in here. I wanted to show, this is the last time, this is a test environment, so no one's out here reconciling and closing these months, so I had to come in and see where are we in the close on this. So if you look at July of 17, so you can see June is locked, or closed, excuse me, it's got the period closed checkbox, so that tells you that one is closed already. July shows you that it's locked, so right now it's not going to let you do anything unless you have that permission, unless you're the one who can go in and make those changes after it's been locked. And then you can see that August is wide open. So everything after August is wide open. One thing to note, you can lock the periods. I could lock August and September right now. Let's say my controller left and I'm months behind, but I still wanted to lock these and lock people out of them. I could do that. It's going to let you lock them. It's just that it's going to make you close them in order. All right. So we're going to close. I'm going to show you first. You click on that little checkbox, and now you can see that these have all already been done. They have the little green arrow, but I'm going to go ahead and click on this close button to close this one. Just so we can get into the next one and close one of them front to back. So I'm going to close the period. And you'll notice that it had I'll show you on the next one. It had, which book are you closing? Does anybody here use multi-book? Oh man, sorry. I'll remember that. I won't do that again. Okay, raise your hand again for a multi-book. Okay, so there's a couple of you out there. So with multi-book, you can close the books separately, just like the subsidiaries separately. Excuse me. So so you'll see that. So I'm going to go back, and if you're in this period close checklist, in a lot of places in NetSuite, if you click on the list button, it'll take you back to the list of things you were looking at. So here we are, and I'm going to open back 17, and I'll show you if I went in here in September, because I haven't closed August yet, you'll see that I can do lock all, but do you see how these have a prerequisite? I don't know if you can read that, but it says previous periods are open, and it won't let you. It's telling you everything that has to be done before you can do that. All right, so I'm going to go back to my list. And let's just run through a quick close together. They're never this easy, as we're going to show today, as people here can attest, but we'll talk about each of them. So you click on, actually, I'm going to show you real quickly. Let's say I decided, oh, I forgot one thing for July. I'm going to go ahead, I want to reopen that period. If you click on the period, see how there's only one green arrow there. So right now I could go in and reopen that period. By clicking on that, it's going to force a justification, and then so you have to write, and I would recommend writing a really good one, not just your name or something. And the reason is when your auditors come in and look at it, and anyone looking at it, it'll save this justification on why something got opened and closed again. So you reopen your period. And that's okay because I don't have any. It's saying it's going to reopen all subsequent periods, and we don't care. So now it's all the way back. Oh, I was thinking, let's see if I can close it. Quick close. Yep. So I had enabled the quick close feature, and if I didn't have that, I would have had to go through every one of those lines again and say that it was done. All right, I'm going to go back to my list, and then we're going to close the next month and just talk briefly about some of the things that are on there. So we start our checklist. If this were well, I'm going to say lock AR just one. Okay, it is a one world environment. So you can see this is where if I knew that maybe Peru and Mexico were done with their AR, but nobody else was, I could just lock those, or you can just say mark all and close everybody's. Now let's say I found out that AP and payroll, all of that was, everything else was done at the same time. I can skip the lock AP and just go straight to lock all. And I'll lock, and you can see this would be, excuse me, pretty tricky to keep track of if you had 12 subsidiaries out there and lots of different people working on them. Sorry about that. All right, so the very first one here is to resolve date period mismatches. What that is, as you know, you can have a setting that lets you put it, yes?
Where does this checklist come from? I don't have that in my head.
So it's probably, you may not have, are you an administrator or have they given you permission to see this? Because it is permission driven.
I'm the controller.
Okay, and do you try to do you're the one who's in charge of your close?
Yes.
So there's something called manage accounting periods. There's a permission for that. I got here by going to setup, accounting, manage accounting periods.
Right, but what I'm saying, I only have lock AR, lock AP, lock off. That's all I have.
Okay,
It depends on what's enabled in your account. So whatever features you have, if you don't have inventory, it's not going to give you negative inventory, those kinds of things.
and you might not allow date period mismatches, so then you wouldn't have that. So there's an enable feature for that too. So each one of these is driven by a feature. But I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question the first time. So, yep.
I only have 7. You don't have 20.
Yeah.
I do have resolve date period discount.
Yep, that's, I think, so if you have the result date period mismatches, it's because you allow people to put a period on that doesn't match their date. And now it's saying when you're closing, hey, you might want to look at them to make sure nobody got crazy and put it into December of 20 when it was really supposed to be January. So you come in here and you click on this resolve date period mismatches, and it's going to go out and look for them. And I apologize, I picked a bad month. I don't have one. But what it would do is show it to you here, and it would show you the period, the transaction date and the period. So you can just go like this and make sure nothing looks weird. And if it looks okay, you go back to period close, and then you mark the task complete. And so in this case, even though I didn't have any, I had to go all the way out, back in again, mark task complete. So now you know why you have that quick close, if you can use it, because if I had only done one small thing back there, I didn't want to go through all the way, mark task complete, come back and make that happen. Okay, review negative inventory. This is so that you can see if there is negative inventory, you can look at it and make sure it makes sense and that you know about it and why it's there. I guess maybe I haven't worked with inventory enough to know, but I don't understand why anybody would have negative inventory. I know it happens, but I don't know if there's a legitimate reason why you would leave it on your books at the end of the month, because it's essentially showing you less of an asset. And it's like, do you have it or not? And if you don't have it, then it should be on order. So you should really look at that. I mean, clearly this is a demo account, but you would want to review that to say, and then now I'm going to say, yep, it's okay. Now remember, you can also do it by location so that you could have different people doing this task for different locations, and then you'd have to know when they've all done it, and then you're going to come back to your period close and mark the task complete. If I didn't mark it complete, it would have shown it would have shown that it's in progress here. It has that a little clock to show that someone's working on this. They've already started, but they haven't completed it. All right, then we're going to review inventory cost accounting. So if I were to have put in let's say I do a really fast close and I wanted to do this, but I bought a bunch of product on the last day of the month, and I'm using average costing, and it has to go out and redo the average cost on everything. or something, how a NetSuite goes out with inventory and it does some stuff in the background. That's one of the few things where it's got costing activity that happens in the background. If it were still running, you wouldn't want to close your books because it has to complete its cycle before you close your books. So right now it says that it's not running. So then I can say, great, I can close this. If it were running, you'd have to wait and let it finish and then mark the task complete. All right, review inventory activity. This one just shows you all of the ins and outs of your inventory for that period, so that you can, and it'll show the inventory items down the left, and then you can collapse and expand, and hopefully you know about this collapse and expand button down at the bottom. I just collapsed it. Now I'm going to expand it, and then I can say I want to see what this one did. Nothing. So these numbers are your quantity on hand, but you can go in and see. I'm now going to expand all, and I can see, oh, I had an invoice there. So looks like I sold to, so you can flip down this and see it. I personally don't have experience with closing books with inventory where I come in here and look at it, but it's a review for you to go to. Now I'm to go back and mark the task complete. And then create intercompany adjustments. This is expenses and time. So if you have it turned on to allow someone in one subsidiary to enter time against a project in another subsidiary, and then have that go back and forth, like I'm going to bill in company A, I'm going to bill my time for this project, and someone in company B worked it. You have to pay company B for that person's time that you're invoicing. And so this creates all of that. And again, that's a whole different session, but if you have that turned on, that feature, then you need to come out here and do it. So we'll hit that button again, and there aren't any in this period. So we will go back to the close and mark the task complete. All right, revalue open foreign currency balances. That one is, I'm going to click on the currency revaluation. So what this does is it takes anything that's open in AP or AR in another currency. So if I've got let's say I got a bill from a Canadian company, and it's in Canadian dollars, and so I put it on my books as a payable in Canadian. You can tell that when I pay that in US dollars, it's going to have to translate it. So one day my debt is worth X, $100, and then one day it's worth $102, and one day it's worth 98, depending on what the exchange rate. At the end of the month, NetSuite goes out and says, what open payables do you have in another currency, and what's the rate today? I'm going to do an adjustment in your books as of today's rate, as if you were going to pay it off today. What would it cost you? And then it reverses it on the first of the next month, because it says that's really not the rate you're getting. Let's wait and see what rate you get, because when you pay the bill, it's going to put in the right rate. So it does that for receivables too. If someone owes you money in a different currency, it also takes your bank accounts. If I'm holding pesos, I'm in my US subsidiary, I'm holding pesos, it's going to say, what are these pesos worth in US dollars today? And it's going to do an adjusting entry for you. So that's a realized gain or loss, where the AP and AR are unrealized gains and losses that get reversed. And the nice thing is this does all the work for you on that. And it's super helpful. It takes some setup. It's worth the time to do it, because then it does it all for you, and you can get comfortable with all of that revaluation. And pardon? Okay.
When you're booking those adjustments, is there a way to ensure that the adjustment transactions have the same or a particular value for the project or the department throughout the entire adjustment?
So he's asking if there could be a particular department or project on them. Make sure that you can limit it to that when you're doing that. I believe that this department field and look, these class fields up here work, but not the custom segments don't show up here, or the project name, because this isn't, this doesn't have name in here anywhere, right? So I can't control that, but it looks like you can control the class department location. So no, I don't think you can edit the transactions once they're created. You could do a journal entry and refer to it and say, I now need to actually allocate, make this go. In fact, you could create an allocation because that would be a way to say anything that lands here that's not classified, I now want to classify, and you could do an allocation to classify it to whatever you wanted. But it would have to be a separate journal entry that you refer back to that. Good question. Okay, okay, we did that one. I'm trying to get through, I'm trying to do a half an hour on each of these, so I'm now at a half an hour, so if I start talking faster, that's why. Then you calculate your consolidated exchange rates. This is where it goes out and it looks at all of the currencies that you hold your books in. Doesn't matter if you have transactions in other currencies, but if you hold your books in these currencies, it wants to know what your exchange rate is, because this is the consolidated one. So if I'm running headquarters and I want to see all of my other books, I've got books in, euro, peso, and I want them to be translated to US dollars so that I'm looking at my consolidated books in my base currency. This is where it gets those rates. Okay, that's what this table is used for. So that's why it's the consolidated exchange rate table. This isn't the table that's used when you're doing a transaction. This is when you're closing your books and you're consolidating them. So if you hit calculate, it's going to go out and it'll look at your current, there's 3 types of currencies, current, average, and historical. So every account in your books, you tell it which one to look at for consolidation. Should I look at current, average, or historical? Those are your only 3 options. If you select current and you hit calculate, it's going to go look at that rate, the Canadian dollar in this case, at the end of the month of August, and it's going to say that's the month end rate, that's my current rate, and it's going to fill that in, and that's from that transaction currency table that it gets that. The average rate, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's a weighted average based on the transaction that you've had during that month in these other currencies. This is the most often the one that people type over when they're doing their consolidated exchange rates. They might say, I'm just going to go out to Oanda and look at what the average rate was for the month, and I'm going to plug that in. But if you don't do that and you use this, it's a weighted average of your transactions that month. So it can be better. It might be hard to explain to somebody because you can't just say, well, this is where I got that number. You have to go out and look at every transaction to show how it was weighted. Historical, if I have like a fixed asset account, I might mark that as historical. So it keeps the original, the month that you purchased that item, it keeps that rate on that item. It's kind of confusing. We don't have time to get into it, but keep in the back of your mind that this is the table when you're doing consolidation. So if you see consolidations look really crazy, it's probably because of your consolidated exchange rate table didn't get a good rate in there. And if you notice that, why does Canada look exactly like the US in my consolidations? It's because it's a 1-to-1 somewhere in this consolidated table. We don't have a different currency. So it's very important to do it. If you hit this calculate button, it'll calculate all of them. And then you can just come in, notice it's got the pencils, and you can overwrite the currency that you want. And so I'm going to say back to period close, mark task complete. And then I'm down to the elimination entries.
What was the historical based on?
It'll go back if I have a fixed, remember that you would mark your fixed asset account. That's the one that's the most commonly marked to historical. So it's typically a balance sheet account. It might be a loan also or something like that, where you want that account to go back to the transaction date of whatever got put in that account and look at that rate. So it won't change the rate every month. It'll go back to the historic rate that you used when you added that transaction. So it is confusing. And what I always suggest to people is go out into a future period and run some tests on these and put something in and then watch how it affects your consolidated exchange rates if you're, your consolidation, to make sure you're doing it right. Okay, so I'm going to run it. There aren't any, I thought I had one, but now I'm running out of time anyway, so I'm just going to say back to period close. Again, remember those were the intercompany eliminations that it'll create journal entries for you to back out that revenue and cost between them. I'm going to mark the task complete, and now I can close. And that's when the accounting department goes out for drinks. And so we close the period. All right. I was going to talk about the non-GL changes and show you an example of that, but we'll come back to that. I was going to show a picture of, I go to a journal entry, I can't change it, I check the box, I go back and change it. I just told you we don't have to go through that, but I will show you where it is on the one that we just changed. If you click into, like I'm going to click into March here, it's right up here. There's a checkbox to allow non-GL changes. So if you need to go back and turn that on, you can check that box and save. Now, anything in March, I could go back and edit and make any changes to it as long as it didn't change the GL. So you're still safe, it's still closed, but it lets people go in and add comments. All right, any questions on month-end close? Do we all feel like experts? What day is today? Everyone's probably already closed, so you can't wait now for the end of July, right? To go back in. And now again, it's different for every company. Your close is going to look a little bit different because of what you have enabled. So what you saw today is just that high level view of that. Okay, and we'll have time at the end, I think. I'm hoping we'll have a little bit of time maybe during the forum that we do at the end. If we want to dig into any of these more, we can do that then. Okay, let's look at bank recs. Another, so exciting, this topic. So again, the purpose of bank and credit card reconciliations, or really any account that you have in your system, is to make sure that your general ledger has all of the activity that the bank or credit card has. So if you think about your personal finances, and I know I'm probably weird, I do reconcile my bank and credit cards. I use QuickBooks at home and I go through, and it's actually been helpful for me for working with NetSuite, because then I know, oh, this is what I'm trying to do. But imagine at home, if you didn't reconcile, you might not know that you had that one charge from the bank, and you need to get that in your books so that in a corporate world, and then at least you can classify it. It hits someone's budget, everyone knows about it. So you just want to make sure that your accounts match with what really happened, that they show reality. I just noticed that typo. I don't want to fix it now. They have to happen before the start of your month-end close, because you're not going to go into your month-end close and then go do a bank rec after, because you're going to make changes. So reconcile every bank account and credit card every month with no difference. That's my advice to you. That's your pro tip there. You probably already know that, but I've seen where bank recs haven't happened, but the close has happened. And so that's a bad combination. You're gonna have to open up your close to finish the bank rec. So make sure you do that. And then I'm gonna go out and show you this one, but this shows, it's the reconciliation history on an account. And I'm embarrassed to say this is one that I was working on. I looked at it and thought, how did I do that with the difference? But you'll see that there was a $39 difference at the end of 16, and then in 18, I fixed it. And so you can do that if you have a reconciliation that has a difference one way and you do another one. Let's say they don't want to open the books. You can have a reconciliation that has a difference the opposite direction, and then you're okay. But in the meantime, your balance sheet has been off by that amount. And so just know that. And let's see. So there's two ways of reconciling your accounts in NetSuite. There's the manual way, which they've had forever. So any of you who've been on NetSuite forever, it's the transactions bank, reconcile bank statement, reconcile credit card. Now there's a new, more automated way that came out last year, transactions, bank reconcile account statement, and that would be for both credit card accounts and bank accounts. Use the same method. I want to do an apology here, because in the past I've talked about this bank account reconciliation, the second one. I said, oh, you know, it's the Nolan one. Well, it looks just like the Nolan one, but I was talking to the Nolan folks and they said, no, they didn't buy that from us. They bought the fixed assets product from Nolan, NetSuite did. So that's why I thought they bought the bank rec, and I should have verified that before I ever said that out loud. So it is not the Nolan one. It looks just like it, but it doesn't act. The Nolan one is more advanced. So just so you know, if you're having trouble with your bank recs, Nolan has a product that looks like this one, but it has more automation in it. And there's some other ones, and I'm blanking on what they are, because Nolan's been around the longest for their bank rec automation. So those are your two ways of doing it. The manual way, you review the GL transactions manually and you clear them on the statement. So it's the old check, check, check. I see this on my statement. I'm going to check these off. And then you add anything that isn't in your account but is in the bank account, or you maybe delete things that you have in your general ledger that aren't on the statement, that aren't just like open checks that haven't cleared, and then you reconcile account. I have a few tips in here to always have the start date, and it's hard to see here, but always have that blank. That's what I recommend, because then you know that you're not ignoring things that maybe got posted predated and they're not showing up. So if you leave it blank, then you know that you're always seeing everything and you won't get yourself in trouble. You can click the complete later button if you're halfway through a reconciliation and you want to save it because you're leaving for the day. You can hit complete later so you don't have to start over. Sorting the columns helps it go faster. So if you are looking for a particular dollar amount, if you click on the amount header, it'll resort them. But here's a tip. If you have already reconciled some, I've checked 3 boxes and now I want to resort by a different column, it'll lose what you just did. So be sure to do complete later. Click the complete later, come right back in, resort. Does that make sense? Pro tip there. Bad experience. Okay. And then I have noticed that if I change the width of the screen, I can get the dollar amounts closer to my checkbox. It doesn't let you reorder them on the screen or anything. And if you've got a nice big monitor, the dollar amounts are a mile away from the checkboxes. So I always make that window really small, and then I can get them closer together. And so I don't do a lot of reconciling this way anymore, unless it's an account that only has like 3 transactions, then I don't bother importing it. But if you have any volume of transactions, do it the other way. So, but this is still out there. And again, I'm going to do a demo real quick after I go through the slides, but I wanted you to have the slides too. So to save time, you can import your transactions and have them auto match. It makes the bank rec much easier. You can import with these formats. OFX is and QFX, I believe, are both QuickBooks type formats. So most banks have those as an export. So it's pretty easy. So you go to your bank, and when you're looking at your statement, you can say export transactions, and then it'll say what format. You pick one of these, and then you save that file somewhere, and then you go into NetSuite, upload the file. Then the system will try to match to what you already have in your general ledger, and it'll match based on some rules, and I'll show you what those are. And then so when you first go into reconcile, you confirm the matches that the system did for you, and you say, yep, I like all of those, or nope, that happened to be a $100 check, but it wasn't for that, you know, whatever. Checks are easy because it goes on the number, and you're usually fine with those. And then you manually match the rest of them, or create any unmatched imported transactions. So bank charge is a good one, where of course you're not going to have that in your GL yet, but you create it while you're looking at it, and then you complete your reconciliation. The good part about this is you know that once you've got that left side empty, which is what you imported from your bank, you should be good to go. You don't have to do the looking at the total and say, does it tie? At that point, you know it does, because you imported your transactions. all of the transactions are reconciled and you're done. But I'll show it to you. This gets into that difference business that we talked about earlier. One quick note on that is if your auditors come in and they want to see your bank rec, and then they look at your balance sheet and they say, these numbers aren't the same, you must have something wrong, be sure to run your balance sheet by date, because if you have a date period mismatch, because the bank recs are done by date, not by period. Everything is date based on a bank rec. And so I've had people really concerned before, like, wait, my bank rec doesn't, the auditors are mad, it doesn't match. And it's like, go run your balance sheet by date. So you have to change your preference to say all, you know, how you run your financial reports, you say none of them by period. And that's in your personal preferences. You go change that, go run your balance sheet, put the as of date as the date of your bank statement. Now it should match that reconciliation, okay? There's a place on the account that controls how it's reconciled, and this is new. It's that use confirm transaction matches and reconcile account statement pages. That means I'm importing my transactions. And the first time you import them for a bank, it comes out here and it checks this box to say, oh, you're using the new method. If you ever have to go back to the old method, which we'll talk about when you have to, you'll have to come to the account record itself, edit the account, uncheck that box, and now it'll show up in the old way and you can finish a reconciliation. And that's how you can review the history of your reconciliations, is to go in the old way. And when you first bring up the account, you click on this history button, and then it shows you all, and you change the dates on the bottom, it'll show you all of your history for that account. And so I would recommend to everyone to go home, do that on every account you have, and make sure that you don't have any differences that aren't made whole in a further period. So you can just look at all your, I didn't know about this, and it was one of those, how much time did I waste? I would go in and I would look at every one by going to the reconciliation report and then changing the date on the bottom and looking at all of them. And I found out about this one, I'll say maybe a year and a half ago, which I should have found it a lot sooner than that. So let's see. Oh, if you're wondering, this is just some weird, I put some tidbits in here, sorry. If you're wondering when something got reconciled, you can go into the ledger of that account. So go into your chart of accounts, click on the name of the account. It brings up the ledger, and off to the right, it'll say what month it was reconciled in, or it'll have the word reconcile, like I want to reconcile this. And so that'll help you know what, if you're looking for when did this item actually get reconciled. You can look in the ledger to find it. After you've done your reconciliation, a best practice is to save off the PDFs of the summary and the detailed reconciliation reports as PDFs. I say PDFs because then you know nobody can mess up that Excel file and get in there and play with it. You want them as PDFs somewhere, because if, God forbid, someone comes in and changes something later, you can at least compare the two reports and say, oh, I see what changed. This one is no longer on it, or these two are no longer there. So because if you re-reconcile and save that, it's going to overwrite those reconciliation reports. So you'll never have that history of the old one. Okay. There is a known issue with 2018.2 in the release. When they did something, and I haven't gotten to the bottom of it, but I know it messed up a bunch of people's reconciliations, the automated, I see nods. So what happened, or what we saw, I don't know why, but you would go in and you would see that some things got unreconciled that had been reconciled before. Also, when you went into the new automated reconciliation on the left side, it showed a whole bunch of activity that had already been reconciled, and it's like, why is this showing up here? I don't want this here. There's no way to get rid of it, unless they might fix it, but for now, the way I picture it is there's a bucket out there that as you pull in your transactions from the bank, it fills this bucket, and And then it gets marked in that bucket of if it's been reconciled. Somehow a bunch of those got unmarked, even though they are reconciled in your books. The actual general ledger is reconciled. The imported transactions got somehow unreconciled. You don't care about those because once you've reconciled your bank account, this bucket over here is useless. So what you have to do is just change your date range that you're viewing the bank transactions to the actual bank dates of your statement, and then you're fine. I know as accountants, we like to clean things up and have them out of there, but we can't in this case. So unless NetSuite fixes it, that's been my advice to everybody is change your dates on the left side, and we'll look at that in a minute. And then, yes, go ahead.
I was just wondering if that Nolan Bank rec had that issue.
I don't think it did. Yeah. So you could call them, and they've presented here before. They're in Boulder, Patty's in Boulder, and they would certainly answer that and demo for you. So yeah. Okay, let's get into the demo. I'm going to try to do this in 10 minutes, then we'll take a break. So nobody panic that I'm going to just keep going. All right, here's our demo. I'm using a live environment because bank recs are really hard to show in a test environment because who's got bank statements they're going to load up into a test environment. So I help out with a nonprofit, and so that's what we're looking at is their books. And it's a little bit embarrassing because I'm trying to give this away to someone, so I haven't reconciled very much this year. So just forgive me, I'm a volunteer. And I'm going to be training someone, so I thought, oh, that'll be really good for them to learn and do 10 reconciliations in a row, right? You with me? I'm a giver. So, all right. So, first thing I wanted to show you is if you want to see your rec history, you would go into Transactions, Bank, Reconcile, Bank or Credit Card. I'm going to show you a credit card because I just want, this is the one that has this history that had the problem. And then you pick the right account here. Now remember, the only account, well, in this case, the only accounts that are going to show here are credit card type accounts that don't have that checkbox checked over on the account. Okay. Yes. Did it go small again? I went into a new account. That's why. Is that better? Okay. So I'll go there again. Transactions, Bank, Reconcile credit card statement. And then, and I don't have to do anything here. I just click on the history button because I'm going to pull up my history for this account. And it's going to warn me that I was halfway through a rec. I didn't save it. And it's kind of nice that it does that. I'm going to go here and just go back to all time. And then now I'm going to see my differences. And this is where I'm saying, I don't know, it would be nice if it had a total on that one. But I can look at that and say, yeah, I'm okay. Right now I'm okay, but I wasn't from 16 and 17. Volunteers, you know, you can't fire them. Okay, so that's how you see the history. Any questions on that? So we're going to do the traditional bank rec way real quickly. We're in here. Oh, I was going to do that over in this one. Transactions, Bank, Reconcile bank statement. That's how you get in the old way, right? And now the only bank's accounts that I'm going to see are the ones that are not, don't have that checkbox checked over on the account record itself, but you'll see that I have all of the accounts that are still done the manual way will show up here. And so when you get into this, it's going to show you your last reconciled balance from the prior reconciliation. Again, you can put your statement date in. You should put your real statement date in, but then leave the start date empty so that it goes back all time in case something got backdated. And then you put your ending statement balance here. And then it's nice because along the way, you can see you're getting your difference is going away, and that's your goal, to make that difference 0. Then you know you're done, and that's your key. So then you come down here, and remember this is the old way, and this is where I make that screen smaller so I can see them. But I might have my bank rec up on my other screen, the bank statement, excuse me, on my other screen, or I might have a hard copy that came in the mail. I'm going, oh, okay, I found that one. That was 15. Now you can sort, again, I told you can sort by these columns, which help you find things faster. Remember that if you have checked some and you want to resort, go and say complete later, come back into it. It's a pain in the butt, but it's the right thing to do. And then you keep checking. And so you can also sort by payer, memo, reference number. I've had, you can get pretty creative with adding memos that help you with your rec, right? Because then you can sort by the memo field or by any of these fields, you can sort by it, so that it helps you find things. And then you're checking on your deposits and credits here, and then you're checking on your checks and payments here. So these are the things that went out. These are the things that went in. It gives you a total as you go. So if you have a bank statement that, well, all of them summarize all of your checks, you can say, oh yeah, that matches. So I know my problem isn't there. It must be somewhere else. And then if you have a new charge, like you need to add the bank charge, you can just come in and add it right here. Actually, I'm in a test environment. You can, I don't know what bank they have. You can put that in with the date, number, account, department, location, class. I forgot to test this. I'm not sure. I think that you can put other classifications here, like your custom segments, but I'm not positive. So that would be a good thing to test, because if you can't, then you're not going to want to use this new charge, new deposit. You're going to keep another window open and put it in. You know, you see your difference, you go add it, you say complete later, come back in, and now that thing will show up and you can reconcile it, okay? So it is nice that you can add charges and deposits from right here. They will create journal entries. Yes. Sorry, I had to think about that. In the new one, you can have different transaction types, but these will create journal entries, all right? And then once you've got this to 0, you know you're done, and you say save. And then, like I said, go out and print the summary and the detailed statement right away as PDFs, so that you've got that backed up, all right? Now we're going to look at the new way. I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to go to bank. So the first thing I would have done to start this process is import my online banking data, and you choose a file. And this is where, you know, I'm going into my hard drive, and up here it tells you that OFX, QFX, BAI2, and some others. You pick which account, because you could be loading into multiple accounts, right? So make sure you pick the right account, and then submit. I've never changed the date format, and it works fine. So once you submit it, it'll tell you how many transactions came in, so you know that it's done. So then I go into my bank and I say, all right, I want to confirm. Actually, I'm going to look at the matching rules first. These are the default rules where it will match on the transaction number and amount, match on amount and transaction number without prefixes and leading zeros. So you know how the bank checks always have all those zeros. And then a match on the amount when the date is within the 90 previous days. That's a pretty broad. I don't remember adding that one, and I don't think that they would have given that one, because that seems pretty broad. So you can just uncheck that. You can also do new rules to try to get it to help you with your. So if you can find logic around your matching that you can put into a rule, make it put it out here so that you can make it go faster. And these rules are done by. Let's go ahead and add one here. And then the rule conditions, you can pick a type of transaction. Let's say, then it'll let you pick fields, and you can play around with this. Again, I haven't used this very much, but it'll help you if you've got a logic built in, then you can get that. Yes, Margie. Yep.
So it never sort of matches up. I usually I go there first and check that compared to the location.
Yep.
Is there a ruling for that, or is that just always have to be done? Can that still be done using this because it can still do it manually? Make a rule.
Yes, so the question Margie had for anyone online is the ADP comes in with one big fat transaction, but in the general ledger, she's got, let's say 20 that make up that one. I don't know, I think with Nolan, I saw when they did the demo, you can have that set up as a rule. I don't see it here exactly what that would be unless anyone's tried this. I think we could play around with that, Margie, to see, but I do know how to do it manually in the back where we were.
Oh, no.
I mean, in the automated one,
Oh,
you can mark 20 things on one side and 4 on the other, and you'll see at the bottom that they match at 0. So that's how I would do it if this rule didn't work, but I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'll look into that. Okay, so once you've set your rules, then you come in here and you say confirm the matches that happened. So I'm going to pick my account because then you'll see. Now, when I was talking about left side, right side, that's where I'm talking about this side right here. This is the imported statement transactions. And look, August 2016, why is that there? It wasn't there before. And this is because of that weird thing that happened. So this is where you change this to what month? I'm just going to do February. We'll change this to February. All right. And now, so note what I did was I just limited my statement transactions that I'm looking at to whatever my statement dates were. All right. So you can ignore everything else that's out there. Now, if I go to my review matches, it's going to show me everything that it automatically matched. And like I said, we're behind. So, and I don't have a lot of the transactions in. So, so this is reviewing the matches, and I can look at them and say, yep, that looks pretty good. I'm okay with those. I did see this one. Yep, okay. And then I say, yep, those are fine. And then by going back to the unmatched, it's the same as going into this transactions bank reconcile account statements is the same as clicking on the unmatched here. And you can also get back to, you'll have to confirm your matches once you're all done. But now I have my unmatched ones, and this is the same as what we did on the other screen, except I'm matching left to right, and I'm saying what's in my statement, what's in my my account. And so Margie, what you would do is your statement is going to have one thing, like this big 55,000, right? And then over here on the right, if you put a memo in that said ADP, you could sort by memo over here, and then you could check all the ones that make that up, and then it would match. So, and down at the bottom, it gives you a running total that says, look, the match difference is 54, so I'm not done yet. I got to keep going. And it's not going to let you hit this little match button until they match. And then you're basically saying, these are out, those are good. You know, you're grabbing them and moving into the confirmed. So the ones on the right are the NetSuite transactions. Now, if I'm reconciling February, I probably don't want to see March, April, May, June, because I'm behind, right? So I would change my dates over here to be through, I might go to 3/2 in case I put something in wrong, right? And then over here, I'm going to say all time because I want to know what I have out there that's prior to February that hasn't been reconciled yet, like this check that this guy never cashed. Well, it's very sweet of him. It is a nonprofit. So at some point, we'll write that off and just say he's not going to cash it. But this was from last year. So then I see all my old ones, and then I start my reconciliation by checking things on the left and the right. Now, if I have something like, I'm going to do this again. Remember, too, that you can there's multiple pages. So do you see this? I've got 130 items on my statement. And so I'll have to go to page 2, page 3, okay? So remember that you can page around, and eventually I would have that over here too if I had all my stuff in here. So there's a one, and this I'm going to demonstrate the, there's a charge on here that we get a whole bunch of charges on our bank. So the opposite situation that you described, Margie, let's see, I gotta put my date here right. Okay, so on February 20th, they had a motorcycle ride where they, each motorcycle is insured for the trip for $75. So I had a check in here for $450, but if we look over here, I'm gonna sort by amount because I know they're all $75. And there were a whole bunch of them in here, and they were all on 220, and they were to the same. I could have sorted by vendor name. That probably would have been smarter. But here I can see them. You can't, because I made the screen so big, bless you, you can't see the names. But look, when I hover over these, I can see it says MBA Rental. That's the name of the insurance company. And notice too that when you hover over the middle memo and the name, they're slightly, you get more information on that memo field. That's what you imported. So now I can see a phone number if I have to call them or something like that. So don't worry if you can't see the whole thing. But now I'm going to say, oh yeah, those 75s that were from 220 all balance to that one for 450 over here. And now notice down below it, I must have something else checked. Sorry. Yep. All right. So what I'm going to do is, I thought I'd have an mark all and an unmark all. I don't think I do. Here they are. Down here, I can uncheck them. Look at that. So now I'm good. So I saw what was already checked on both sides, and now I'm to 0, and I say match, and then that'll go away. And so it's kind of like, if you want to, it's like a game, you're trying to get rid of the left side. It's like Tetris, let's get rid of all these things. And some of us, like that kind of thing. Okay, you can also, I'll just do a couple more quickly. We're a little bit late for the break, but not too bad. Let's say Adobe, I have this check coming in as a recurring because we use an Adobe product. And let's say it changed 1 month. I can open up this check. It took me to another window, and I can edit it, change the amount on it, save it, and then come back in here, and I would have to hit this refresh button right here for it to be different. So I like that better than the complete later all the way out back in again. Okay, so you can update them. Like I said, if I have a bunch of things over here that I've never put in my ledger and I have to add them all at one time, what I do is I open up another window small right here so that behind it I can see all my transactions. And the reason I do that is when you come down here, let's say I have this transaction and I want to add, you can create a journal entry to add it. You can add a new charge or new deposit. So if I add a new charge, it's going to come up like this. But look, I don't have my custom segment that I created for which ride it was on. So I can't use this feature because most of the things I'm classifying have a custom segment on it. So, but if you don't, then this feature is great because all you do is you add your payee, and it makes it super simple for you to add because it knows what checking account it's coming out of. You add it here, click add, and you're good to go. It takes that one out. So if you have custom segments, then what I do is open a small window here and I add them. I'm looking over on the left thinking, okay, I have to add these 5. I hit refresh, knock them out, do another 5, that kind of thing. Okay. Yes, Margie. Yes, yes. So, and I'll quickly show that because some people, when they, after that mix up with NetSuite and you went to the historical transactions, you notice that something back in June last year was now reconciled with a difference. And you didn't reconcile it with a difference. And so something happened where a few things got unchecked. Now you can't fix it here. It's not going to let you go back to prior ones. So what you have to do is go into the account list, and so let's say this happened on the account I was just looking at. I would come in here, I'd edit the account, I would uncheck this box, save it. Now I would go in to the old way, transactions, bank, reconcile bank statement, and now that one's going to show up, and I'm able to do it the old way. And so then you can go back to prior ones just by putting in the right date. I could put in 3/31/2018, and I'm going to see my reconciliation now. And usually it's pretty easy because you come out here and one of these is unchecked, and you just check it, and now it's all reconciled again. You see the reconciled is save it, then go back and check that box again, and now you can go reconcile the new ones. I think we're ready for a break. Let's take about 10 minutes. We'll start up again at 10, or should I do 15?
We can go till 10:30.
10:30 for the break. All right, says the president. Oops. All right. I thought I only had a half an hour for that last one, and I really had 45 minutes, so I wasn't late, just want to say. All right, so now we have allocations. So allocations are typically part of your month end because you want to take some dollars that you've booked in one place and you want to give them, you want to spread them somewhere else, essentially. And so you can do that many ways. But the example I'm using here, oh, and I should say, everything that you saw so far was straight NetSuite. Everybody has that functionality, okay? The bank recs, that's all, month-end close, that's all part of straight NetSuite. Now, what I'm showing you now is in the advanced financials module. So you would have to have the advanced financials module in order to do this, okay? If you don't have it, you can talk to your account rep and get it. And the reason you would do it is if it saves you a bunch of time, right? And so at the end of the month, the use case that I have here is I want to pay my rent. My rent bill comes in, and I want to write one check, right? And I just want to hit an account with it. Maybe I have a bunch of utilities that I put in that same account or a same group of accounts. And then at the end of the month, I want to take all of those costs that I put in one bucket, and I want to spread it out to different departments, different classes, different subsidiaries. You can allocate across subsidiaries. It allows you to then take those expenses and spread them to other places. And in this case, you might do it based on head count for your rent. You might say, I want to allocate all of my rent and utilities based on the head count by department, because I want each department to pay their fair share so that when we look at a departmental P&L, it's showing up there. There's many, many things you could do with that. You could do it by square footage that each department does. There's all kinds of them, and that's using a statistical ledger to do that. So the high-level steps to create an allocation, and again, we'll go out and look at one. You have to enable these three features, and this would be if you're using statistical accounts. And let me talk about that for 1 second. So a general ledger is just a bunch of accounts, right? And they're all based on the same thing, like currency, a dollar. With statistical ledgers, you can have a separate ledger and have it based on different units, and you get to pick what those units are. Head count, square footage, you might count, I'm not coming up with another one. Those are the examples I use the most often. And they don't affect your general ledger at all because you're not trying to pull them in with your general ledger. So you can put things in there that are completely used for reporting or for these allocations. They're not going to affect any of your dollar ledger. It's a separate statistical ledger. So if you turn that on, you turn on expense allocations, dynamic allocation, and statistical accounts. If you enable those 3 features, then you would set up your statistical account. So you would say, I want to keep track of head count, and you would create that brand new account, and then you'd set up your statistical schedule in order to create the entries into that account, and then you would set up your allocation, and we'll go through those steps. To create the statistical account, you can see them by changing your view on your chart of accounts. In that top part, there's a statistical, it says a drop down for that. And now you see what statistical accounts are out there. I'm going to have to say that word too many times. Keeps tripping on it. And so you'll add a new one, and then you make sure you set up a default unit, and you might have to create a new unit if your statistical ledger is a different one, and then you can limit it to subsidiaries appropriately. So I had a weird thing happen when I was getting ready for this. I couldn't see the account in my list when I was trying to create the statistical account schedule, so I had to create the new account from there. So the first thing I did was I came out and I created a statistical account from my chart of accounts. I said new, and then I want to, and then when I went in to do my schedule, that new account that I created wasn't in the list for my statistical schedule. So as a workaround, I just hit new from there, and it let me create a new one, and then it worked. And so it was a mystery that I didn't get solved before I came to you. But if you run into that problem, just go ahead and or you can skip straight to that. When you're going to create a statistical schedule, you can go ahead and say add new account from there. The schedule, and I didn't even know this existed, and so does someone know when they added this? Has it always been there? What it does is it lets you count it. Hold on. Oh, based on a saved search, it'll fill in your ledger for you. So imagine if your head count every month changed, right? You've got people coming and going. You would have to go in and write a journal entry to say, take out 2 people in this department and add 3 in this one, or you'd have to make that manually. Well, the statistical schedule will go out and it'll count how many employees you have in each department, and it'll put that in there for you. So as long as you run your statistical schedules before you run your allocations, then it keeps up. Does that make sense? Any questions on the schedule? And again, we'll hop out to NetSuite and look at it there too. All right. Then you create your allocation schedule, and the schedule is where you say, take everything in this bucket and put it into these buckets based on these percentages or on these hard-coded numbers. And so you select the sub from which you pay the expense, make sure the classifications match the payment, which I think it's important. If it were me and I was going to do this rent allocation, I would keep my classifications blank, because then if I ran an income statement by class, I would see that they're not classified, and I would think, what's wrong with those? Oh, that's right, they didn't get allocated. Then once you allocate them, you classify them, so it'll never allocate it again, because your from bucket is only unclassified stuff, and then you allocate it and it gets classified and it's no longer available to be allocated. And so if you pay attention to things like that when you're creating your allocation schedules, and then also as you're making the entries of the things that you want allocated, try to isolate them in some way. Maybe it's an account that you isolate them to, a classification, something, so that when you run your allocations, you know you're done, because that thing's empty, whatever bucket you were using to collect what you wanted to be allocated. And then in the destination, in this case, I entered all of the subs, and I'll show you this one because it's possible that a department could get more headcount later, and so you had to make it everything, right? All possible answers in my 2 subsidiaries. So I was taking all of my rent from one and allocating it out to the subs and their departments based on headcount by department. And so I put all of my subsidiaries in there, so that in case any of them had it, and you'll notice it's hard to see this, but there's no people in the Australia departments or Japan, but they're there in case someone was hired, then it would work. So you want to be thinking, future thinking too, when you're setting these up. You run the allocation and review that the journal entries are created. The tip, because I was playing around with this, is to delete it from here. If you want to rerun it again, it's under that actions button when you do edit, and under the actions, you can delete your journal. So what's nice about allocations is it's not hard to redo them. If you don't like the results, delete the journal entry, go change the date on your allocation and rerun it after, you know, with the changes that you make. So you can't break it, and everything is reversible here. So that's what's good news about allocations, because then you can play around with it and see if the results that you're getting are what you expected. And until they are, just keep deleting the journal entry that's created. And it's creating one journal entry, so that makes it easy. Oh, I got ahead of it because I didn't do my demo yet. But I'm going to watch the door, and if you leave after you write this down, then we're going to, this is the CPE keyword 2, so you'll have to write that down on your sheet. We make sure everyone's still awake. All right, I'm going to go over and we'll do the demo. I'm going to go back into the, this is that test account we were looking at. All right, so the first thing is the headcount ledger. So if you go into your lists accounting accounts, typically you're going to have it on financial up here, and you're going to see your chart of accounts and all of your financial accounts. But if you switch it to view the statistical, now you'll see all of your statistical accounts. Hey, one thing I just remembered about the bank recs, and I thought this was kind of a funny tip. When you're in a bank rec, and you know how you can say reconcile bank account, and it pulls up a bank account for you in that account automatically. Someone had asked a question about how does it know which bank account to pull up, because you've got 20 bank accounts. It always, it'll do the last one that you had up in your screen when you reconciled, but if there was a transaction that happened, like a check or a payment, it'll pull that one up. So it pulls up the one with the last activity. And so there isn't a way to say a default one. Just wanted to let you know that. I thought that was interesting. I don't know why I thought of that other than the view made me think of it. All right, so now we're looking at our statistical accounts, and we can see we added this head count one. I'm going to pull this up in edit mode. So what we did here was we added the account, we gave it a name, and because when I said new, it was going to fill it in as statistical. You have to give it that unit type to say what unit you want, and you can set that unit up over in your lists accounting units of measure. And then you can restrict it, and then just like any account, you can say which subsidiaries is it available to. If you're doing cross subsidiary allocations, you of course would want to include your children. So say put it to your header one and say include all the children. Then if you add a subsidiary later, it's not going to break your allocation if you say include children, where if you hard code select them and add one, it's not going to pick that one up. So another little tidbit there. Okay, so I've set up this headcount ledger out of the blue and just said, I want to track headcount. And then we go to the statistical schedule. I'm trying to remember which one it was in. So the problem is I'm going to have to do it this way because my menus are going too low. So I'm going to click here. Does anybody remember if it's under management or here it is? So it's under financial, not management. And then we're going to create the statistical schedule, and I'm going to look at the list of them because I have one out there. So here's my head count one. I'm going to view it. Actually, I'm going to edit it because it shows what it's easier to look at. So here, I've named the schedule, and then I say which account this schedule is related to. And that account, it'll tell you which subsidiaries that account is available in. And then you tell it what saved search you want. So I put a headcount query out there. I should pull that up. We'll pull it up in another screen. Because this is the query that needs to run in order for this schedule to work. And so my query is looking at I want all departments except unassigned. And then because this is a head count query, so I started with an employee search, right, across all of my employees. And then I said, I don't want my inactive employees. And if the department is not assigned, I don't want to see it. Because in this test data, there were a whole bunch that were unassigned. And then I'm saying I want to count the names and I want to group by department and subsidiary. Okay, so this is giving me a, there's a count by department. So I have one person in engineering product management in the Americas. So that's what I'm trying to get, because that's the journal entry I want to make into my statistical ledger at the end of every month. It's going to go count them. And then it replaces it every month. And it says, how many do I have by department and subsidiary? So back on here on the statistical schedule, I said, go look at that head count search. And it's nice, you can hit this validate button and it'll tell you it was successful. It detected segments, department, and subsidiary. So that didn't work the first time I did it because I didn't have subsidiary in there and it needed that too. I think that was my error. But anyway, it's nice. You can validate it, make sure it works. And then you say how often you want to run it and when the next run was. And then you save it. But you can also run it. You can also run it from this list right here. You can say create journal entry. So when you're testing it, even though I said 831, I could create my journal entry now, and it's going to go replace that in that ledger only. Right? Does that make sense? So I'm not affecting my general ledger here. I'm just putting in the weights that I want to use for my allocation. Okay, and then we're going to look at the allocation itself, transactions, financial. In this case, it was an intercompany allocation schedule, but you could also just do allocation schedules if it's all within one subsidiary and if you don't have one row. I'm going to look at the list. Here's my rent allocation. I'm going to edit that so we can look at it together. And honestly, with allocations, you just have to, you have to get used to them. You have to do a lot of trial and error to make sure that it's getting all the right data in the from bucket and then putting it into the right two buckets. And there's some different options on that. For example, on this one, I've said, okay, we'll start at the beginning here. We want to do it end of period. My next date, 7/31. You can remind and forever, and then it'll show you up in your shortcuts that you have in your reminders. It'll show you that you have an allocation to run. And then depending on this, if you do dynamic allocation, that's what we're doing today because we're using a statistical ledger. That's a dynamic allocation. It can change every month depending on where the numbers lie. Then you tell it your weight source, and this is the account, the statistical account. And then the date basis is year to date. Now, you could also, because it's replacing it, and I checked this, if you're using standard journal entries to change your head count and you're replacing it, you may just want this month. Or there are some times when you're not going to want to look year to date. You're going to want to say whatever happened this month. So just know that this date basis will make a difference, because you could just do this period, whatever happened in that statistical ledger in that period, as opposed to the whole year. And then the units come from the weight source. Okay, so this source tab is saying, what do you want me to allocate? Where can I find it? So you have to fill in these accounts, the subsidiary, the account, to filter it to say, this is what I'm trying to allocate. And then you down here you pick the account that you want. And then I said, I don't care what name is on that transaction. but I want unassigned department, location, and class. This is what I talked about earlier, because when I paid that rent check, which I'll pull up so that we look at, I think I have it up here, check number 55, maybe not. Does that work? Okay. So this is what I'm trying to allocate. So you look at what you're trying to allocate in order to create the source part of your allocation. So in this case, I did a rent check to Abbott for $1,000, but I didn't classify it down here. But you can see I put it into the 6142 and that I was in US West subsidiary. And so now if we look back at that allocation, you're seeing I'm taking 6142 out of US West and with any name and unassigned. Now up here you have the intercompany account. Because we're doing an intercompany allocation, it has to do a debit and a credit in that sub. So it's saying, where do you want me to put the other half of this entry once I allocate it out? So that's the account that I want it to go to. Now if I didn't want it to credit 6142, if I wanted to leave it in 6142 and then point the credit, my allocation, to another, maybe a sub account of allocated rent, I could put that into this credit account right here. And I could also put a department, location, and class into the credit account. So that's half your entry is going into there. All right, in this case, I just wanted to take it out of rent expense because I don't want to see it there in my US West subsidiary. I want that to be zeroed out, and then I want it to be reallocated by department and sub. So this is the from, and then here's my destination. I'm saying go ahead and put it into the Americas rent expense account with their intercompany clearing account, but auto-populate the department based on the weight. Okay, so that's how it knows to go ahead. And look, it did a sample weight because I said update sample weights. If I click that right now, if I had made a change to, it would, maybe there's 50 people now in this department, it would update those. And when you're writing your allocation, click on that update sample weight because that's how you know if it's working. If you don't get any weights, your weight source isn't working, or there's no data, or there's some problem. So if you click on that, then you're good to go. So I'm going to save that and I'm going to run it. So if I say create journal entries now, even though it's not 7/31, I want to show it to you though, that you can execute this at any time and then go delete the allocation that you get. I'll create the journal entry, and then it's telling me what my journal entries are. Notice I said it was one journal entry. I lied because it's multiple, because there's one in every subsidiary. Okay, so it went out and it created these. So I'm going to open a few of them. All right, and then you'll see that it took it out of the US West, and this is the moving it inside the US West account. It credited rent expense, debited my intercompany clearing, and then it put it in weighted into these in the Americas. It did one journal entry to put them there, and they're all going to look like this. And then I thought, well, if I want to redo this, I don't like it. I now have 10 journal entries because it did one in every sub. But I did notice that you can come back into this allocation detail. Remember, I'm in the allocation detail of what just happened, and I can delete it, and it'll delete all of the journal entries that were created by that one allocation schedule. So that was helpful. I didn't have to go try to find the 10 journal entries because they're going to get blended in with everything else. So I thought that was really helpful. So what questions do you have about allocations? Does anybody use them first? Wow. We've got 2 people in the back of the room. And maybe you don't need to allocate things, but a lot of companies do. Yep.
Can you show some of the reporting on the allocation?
If you go to the allocation itself, I'm going to go back out here. You can see what's happened by opening it up and looking at the history on it. That's one of them. The question, by the way, was to look at the reporting on the allocations. If you look at the history button, you can see what journal entries have ever been created for that allocation. But otherwise, everything's going to be inside your general ledger, in your income statement, you know, showing it. Do you have something in particular reporting wise? Okay, we can look at this one because it's a 731 entry. So if I go in and look at an income statement for 731, and I look at my subsidiaries. Did I lose my mic? Is it on yet? I wonder if the battery died. Is it? I flipped it off and on. Yeah. The battery light is red. It should be green. Okay. I'll just talk loud. I grew up with 3 brothers. You had to yell to be heard. Okay, so if you then look by subsidiary and refresh, and I'm going to look at, this was July, we wanted July 19, right? I believe. I could have said this month, that would have been faster in my period there. Now this will be interesting because there's not going to be a lot here, right? Because I'm in a test environment that didn't really have any activity. And so now you can see that it allocated it all out. The rent expense is being allocated out. And there's my total. There must, oh, because this is consolidated, it did an exchange. That's why it's 1,009. You might look at that and say, well, how I only paid 1,000 for my rent. I saw the check. It was right there. It's because of it actually went out, and this is what's hardest about the currencies when you're looking at consolidated. It exchanged it when it sent it over on the journal entry, and then it exchanges it back. It doesn't show the 1,000 in the original because it had to be translated twice to come back to the consolidation. If I put my consolidated exchange rate as the same currency rate as I have in the day that I did that transaction, it would say 1,000. All right, but it's probably not going to be the same because you're going to pay your rent on one day. You're going to allocate. I guess if you allocate at the end of the month, on the last day of the month, as opposed to the day you do your rent, it should work because then your consolidated exchange. Now it's going to use an average. Yeah.
You're gonna have leftover no matter what.
Yeah, it's going to look funny because you're going to say, but I paid that in US dollars and I'm looking at this in US dollars. And so that's why when you see those differences, it has to do with that average exchange rate that's on all of those currencies out there. So what you're not seeing here is the original because I didn't have it go back to a different credit account. If I had made the credit go to the US West account into another credit account. For example, if I had a sub account of rent expense called allocated rent expense, my original 1,000 would be sitting right here in the rent expense plus the 520. Then my credit here would have been 1,000 underneath. You would have seen 1,000 coming out. And so that is a good question from a reporting standpoint. If you want to use a different credit account, you'll see more of a path of how things moved. Does that make sense? Now it's buried because I hit the same account with the allocation that I hit the original check for paying the rent to. And so it's going to net them out because it pulled out the 1,000 and it put in the 560 based on the head count in the US West subsidiary, or in that department too. Oh yeah, and I'm not showing this by department. I should show it by department because we actually allocated by department. So now you're going to see this rent being allocated across all of the departments based on our allocation. Any other questions on allocations? Yes.
I'm new to NetSuite altogether, maybe I'm new question, but would you use the allocations module in the financial module to allocate within your own? We don't have subsidiaries, just one.
Yep.
But I would want to allocate by departments and same thing with the rent.
Absolutely, you would. So the question was, would you use this without the multiple subsidiaries? Yes, I showed it as the more complicated one, but absolutely, if you have one subsidiary and you want to collect all, I think maybe employee benefit expenses or some, you pay the bill and you don't want to itemize it when you pay for something. You want to collect it all in one place and then spread it out based on something else. That you would absolutely do that inside one subsidiary. Then you would just do it by department or class or whatever you want. Yeah. Any other questions?
Just a statement. One of the ways places we find this use is actually the example you gave the most, payroll benefits and rent is really where we see this a lot. Just because, like you said, it's just so much easier to bring in one number and then shove it out based on your best guess. You're not going to go track down exactly how much payroll expenses for each person.
Yep. Yeah, so if you didn't hear online, Mark was saying that it's allocating payroll benefit and payroll expenses and rent are the most commonly used. And it helps a lot for when the AP is paying the bills. They don't have to worry about that itemization on the bottom of it, because if it's dynamic. If it's static, they could pull up, if it's always going to be charged the same, they could pull up last month's and copy that bill and then put in their numbers. But even if it's a static allocation, you can set it up as an allocation, and then it's kind of nice because the AP could just put their vendor bill in and they always put it in the same, and then you as the controller can go out and look at your allocations and change them, and you don't have to retrain someone. Their transactions are always going to look the same, so that's helpful. Yes. It should be something that you just take care of before, like bank recs.
Like if you have a month-end close checklist, I know I did when I was an accountant, we usually just have that as one of the line items, run allocations, and usually it's done, if you have a 5-day close, it's probably done on day 4, 3.5, when all your costs should be at that point. So that way you're not running these things multiple times.
That's definitely not on the checklist in NetSuite.
Correct.
Okay. Cory?
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dana. Thank you for doing that. So we're going to take a very, like a 1-minute pause, and we're going to get Mark up here to do our tips and tricks. I'm going to try and switch the battery out of his mic real quick. 1 second.
You said 1 minute.
60 seconds.
Plug it in, but it did okay. Yeah, didn't run it. Yeah, I know. It's an awkward spot, but.
Jeez. Don't tap it. Okay, so we got to make you the presenter.
So now you should be able to. So go to your GoToMeeting app.
Yep. Right here.
There you go. So just choose, hit that, and then hit share. Here we go.
All right.
And then just start whenever you're ready.
All right. Can everyone hear me okay? Or is this not working?
Hit the on switch.
We good? No. There it goes. All right. Thank you. All right, everyone. Let's get started. My name is Mark Bassnagel. I'm the newest member of the board. I work with RSM. I've been doing NetSuite implementations for about 3.5 years now. Been working with technology for a lot longer than that. And I'm going to show you some tips and tricks today. So there are many different tips and tricks, and it's kind of hard to come up with new ones as you go. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of these things before, but it's always good to get reminded about what, shortcuts, things you can do faster, ways to make your day easier. If you are in NetSuite, I'm going to be switching back and forth between the slideshow, so excuse the clicking around, but I want to make sure I'm demoing this to you guys as best I can. So one thing, and I actually didn't know this one. Oh, is it not still on?
I think you hit the stuff today.
Oh. Well, let's get that back going then. Share your screen. Okay, there we go. All right, so in NetSuite, on any given form that you have subtabs on, how many of you know that you can quick scroll to those subtabs with Alt and then the first letter of the tab? For instance, you notice, and I never noticed this, but the underlined letter here, if I go Alt-I, for instance, it quickly switches me over to install base. This may not be as useful for you on screens that you don't touch a lot, but on customer forms, vendor forms, things that you set up on a regular basis, it can help you hotkey between. Math and amount fields. So let me go back to my home page here. I kind of set up some quick links for myself. We'll just do a new transaction here. And I apologize, I'm in a demo account, so it's probably gonna go a little slower than you're used to. All right, so in the amount field, let me just pull up an account here. Let's get an expense of some kind. Oh, reloading. Freight and delivery is fine. Excel, or pretty much any Excel function you can use for basic math, you can use in NetSuite in the amount or dollar value fields. For instance, you can do something like 30 plus 40, tab out, and it'll add it up. You can do multiplication, you can do division. A lot of people don't know that feature. A lot of people will import CSV journals because they want to use the Excel functionality, but if you're only entering a couple line journal entry, you can simply use the math functions that are built into native NetSuite. How many people do a lot of data entry in NetSuite? Fair amount, okay. I'm sure all of you guys know about tabbing from field to field to field, but if you say you tab too fast, very common thing, you can also shift tab to move backwards. So for instance, shift tab, and you can go the reverse way. I've never used that before, but I thought that might be something interesting. It's very easy to hit tab button too many times if the screen's delayed. So quick, easy, don't have to take your hands off the keyboard, move your mouse, you can keep entering data. So everyone knows that you can use your standard, whether it's Google Chrome, Internet Explorer, your Control F search functionality in your browser, right? Well, one of the nice things about that is, say for instance, I want to look up this account 6110. I can type in interest expense, and it will actually pull, if you have a sublist exposed, you can actually search in those sublists using your native browser functionality. Great way to help speed yourself around, getting from one place to another, looking up an account number that you don't remember or that you only remember the first digits of. All right, on to our fifth tip and trick. So how many people use Excel or web query in NetSuite? Very, very few. Do you guys know what that is? All right, so it's not as good as, say, a Solution 7 or a dedicated tool.
However, but you can export reports to Excel, and depending on your permissions and how that report is set up, you can refresh that report in Excel directly. It works pretty well for basic reports. A lot of times I still like to be able to drill in to the transaction, so I may export a report when I'm done with my financial close and I'm just updating a template that I use every month. But how you do that, let me get back to my home page. Actually, I've got another tab open. All right. So this is just a random report that I grabbed out of a demo account. But if you go to the customization and then go to more options, there is this box here called Allow Web Query. And as you all know, as you all should know, if you don't, you can click on the name of any field in NetSuite and get help for it. If in this box, if you check this box, and this is report by report, you can determine whether or not this can be exported to Excel and updated via web query. One thing I would give you as a piece of caution on that is that I have seen clients try to use that and then they accidentally update when they weren't intending to, and it overrides whatever they had. So make sure if you're doing something sensitive you've saved a copy of, or if you have a template that you use to update every month, that you keep that separate from whatever file you're working in, just so you don't accidentally override old data.
So you can update that out of Excel?
You can, yeah.
How do you do that in Excel?
I actually couldn't get it to work with my Excel permissions, but you can do it.
There's a button that says refresh all.
Exactly.
Put it in there, and it pulls in fresh data when you do that.
Exactly. I just don't have the Excel permissions on my machine to do it. No, it's not a two-way street. It's just a one-way. It just pulls the data down. It does not update transactions or records in NetSuite at all. All right, our sixth tip, which we actually kind of covered earlier, so I'm going to skim over, is close multiple periods. This saves you a lot of time, especially if you're, like we were saying earlier, if you need to make an audit adjustment for, in December of last year or whatever, you can go and make that adjustment and close all those periods with just a couple clicks instead of the very painful process that it used to be of one at a time. Thank you, NetSuite, for that. How many people here use drag and drop? Great, glad to see it's getting pretty widely used. A lot of people don't know what it is, and it is a feature that should come from NetSuite out of the box installed, but it just doesn't. Normally in NetSuite, you go to the Communications tab, attach your records, and you work your way through there, and you have to do like, what, 6 or 8 clicks, whatever it is, to attach a record. Drag and drop allows you to click it, drag it to a little box on the top right of your records, drag it, and it automatically attaches it to that record. And based on the configuration, you can actually determine where those files are supposed to go, based on, hey, vendor bills should always get saved in the vendor bill folder, so on and so forth. How many administrators do we have in the room? Quite a bit, good. So how many of you have set up custom fields, wanted to change what NetSuite says on a field? I'm guessing quite a few. Okay. So one thing that you can do in NetSuite is, say you click on the vendor help or field help for any given field. If you're an administrator, I don't believe you can do this in any other permissions, but I know for certain an administrator, you can click this customize button and it will allow you to change what it actually says when someone clicks on field help. So maybe your organization uses a field differently than normal native NetSuite would. This is a great way to help steer new users in the right direction, where they might have to ask questions to their coworkers otherwise, and help people get down the right path. And you can do it by a different language if you so choose, but I don't know how to read that. One of the features that I am surprised more of my clients do not use, and it's something I push them to, is this quick add new record up in the top here. Most people skim over it, just like this help button and this feedback button. NetSuite, not like NetSuite's going to listen anyway, right? So you need to, they have a process, they're just slow. This quick add button, one of the things I like about it is that you can personalize it to show what you want it to see and what you can't. Unfortunately, there are some limitations about what you can add as a quick add. But you can choose to show a lot of different things. As you can see here, this is a demo account. It's got a lot of things installed in it. The more your system has, the more it's going to allow you to do quick adds. But there are a couple limitations to it. Nothing that stands out that I need to call out particularly. But yeah, if you're a AP, you can get rid of invoice and cash sales and just do bills and vendors and things like that. Whatever makes is easiest. And this is all user specific, but I believe it can also be published with dashboards if you're building custom dashboards. All right, I included this one all as a one tip and trick, but this is really utilizing user preferences. This is something that a lot of users don't get into. They just take whatever's set up out of the box and leave it as such. Some of the things that you can do is, I believe standard NetSuite's 25 or 50 results in a field dropdown. You can change that to be 100, 200, whatever you want. Just be aware that system performance can drop down as it is running a query when you click on that. You can show the internal IDs of fields. A lot of end users don't use that, but it's really helpful for administrators. You can change your NetSuite email signature if you like. You can, as I'm sure many of you are aware, change the color theme of NetSuite. You can autofill transactions. You can alphabetize items regardless of type if you so choose. There's just a bunch of options in there. And how you get to that, and one of the other ones I do want to call out, how many of you have built a saved search, run the saved search, and it takes you right to like a bill or to a customer record or something, and you really wanted to see the list? Well, NetSuite automatically has this feature turned on where if you have one result, it's going to take you directly to that result. It's not going to show you the list. But when I'm building saved searches or trying to validate that my criteria are working, I like to see the list. So what I'll do is I'll go into NetSuite, into my account, go to set preferences, and these are individual user specific, and you can set your results to say, show me the list even when there's only one result. But I highly encourage you guys to go through each of these tabs here and really look at all your options. Some of them are small, some of them make a big difference in your day-to-day use, but it's worth the 20-30 minutes to kind of scroll through each one of these and look at them. How many of you use Suite Solutions? Very few. All right, Suite Solutions are something that not a lot of people know about, but they're really helpful for solving things that you're like, wait a minute, how can the system not do this? This seems like there's got to be 100 other companies out there at least that have this problem. Well, how am I the only one with it? Some of the ones that I just picked up offline or online, advanced approvals gives you some more flexibility, shared vendor bills when you have multiple subsidiaries, consolidated invoicing, once again, multiple subsidiary, invoicing a customer on one invoice for multiple subsidiaries. They even have one, say you have a business that has a lot of volume of transactions, but the dollar amounts can be kind of small, or you have some process where you get left with a lot of couple dollar AR balances. There's actually a Suite solution out there to go write those off automatically. And you can set it up and configure it to knock that out for you, and it saves you a ton of time versus entering all those credit memos and applying them. I do believe they did make them free. Yeah, they didn't used to be. Yes.
I know for a fact that the AR deduction chargeback, the write-off one that you're talking about, that's like $6,000.
Is it?
Yeah, that's one time.
Okay, so they did make a push to make a lot of these cheaper or free, but I don't know if all of them are, but I'm being told that some of them you do still have to pay for. But if you have a they're all free? Okay, so what we're being told is that as of 2019, they should be free, but they're still going to be there if you've paid for them previously.
So if you want one of these bundles, if you're working with a partner, they can go in and they can request a bundle for you and get it deployed. I'm not sure how NetSuite protects if you're working directly through them, how it works with them. But if you just ask your partner and say, hey, I'm curious about consolidated invoicing, you walk me through it, they can get it provisioned to your sandbox.
Thanks for the information. But yeah, once again, it's a great way to try to save yourself some money redeveloping something that was already built by somebody else. and very quick implementation times. I mean, I've had clients get these things up and running in a couple days versus a couple months for some of the more advanced customizations that we might have to build and go through testing and all those things. And one of the nice things about Suite Solutions is they do work very well and consistently, at least the ones that I've used. And so great way to get yourself up and running quickly if you can find a way to utilize them. Yes, ma'am.
And they come unlocked.
What
You
do you-
can change them.
Yes, they do. Yeah, they do come unlocked, so you can change them. We do that with workflows and things on a regular basis. I had to throw in a standard tip and trick. I was running out of ideas. So here you can add shortcuts and use recent records. I don't know how many of you are click happy. I know I am. It's very easy to go, hey, I needed to look at this record, and then you click out of the tab and you want to get back to it quickly. All recent records is a great way to do that. Date shortcuts. Some fields in NetSuite are pretty good about defaulting to today's date, especially if you build a workflow, we can do those kinds of things. But if you're entering, say, a vendor bill, for instance, you can use shortcuts to make things faster. So let's go to a vendor bill here. Notice it does fill out today's date automatically for you, but there are fields that it doesn't do that. If you wanted to fill in today's date quickly, all you have to do is put a T in the field. Yeah, and it'll automatically update it. Or if you put a Y, it'll go to yesterday. And there's a handful of others that I've included on the slide, and these will get shared around and be posted to our website and after the presentations. So don't feel like you have to write these down. Yes, ma'am.
Just for vendor bills or something else?
No, it works on any date field. Yeah, good question. Yeah, and I've never really used this plus or minus one, but I know quite a few of my clients have in their AP groups where they're doing a lot of data entry. They use that a lot because, oh, hey, you know, minus moves them 2 days back real quickly. Especially the users that are trying not to, you know, have to switch from keyboard to mouse back and forth all the time throughout the day. Great to learn these tools, and I've included as many of them as I could find on this slide here.
Moves it back from today's date or the date that's in
The date that's in the field. Yes, sir.
You do ships and then see everything tomorrow also.
Yep, yes it will. I can add that to the slide before we send it out. One of the other generic kind of tips and tricks that I always like to cover in these kind of sessions is the global search prefixes. A lot of people that are more super users, likely the people in this room, know about this and they use them to some extent. What I have seen in my career is a lot of end users don't know these. And they'll just type in, you know, bills or the vendor name, and they'll get 60 references. Well, if you type vendor in or VEN, and you can really help save your search time down. I included this so that hopefully you guys can share this around with throughout your organizations and try to save your team some time. Hopefully it's not a shocker to anyone in this room. Some more global search tips. One of the things we do like to recommend to our clients at RSM is that they use that global search bar. It is a very powerful tool if you know how to use it. Actually, a couple of these I didn't even know. Actually, one of them, the underscore will replace any letter. So if you forget how to spell a vendor name, for instance, you can put in, or let me just use myself here. So it will come up where any of the sections where it has an M and a C with 2 spaces in it, or 2 different letters in between. Not the most commonly used, but I thought it was kind of interesting and something I didn't know, so I threw it in as a tip and trick for you all. We all know, just like with like Google, things like that, wildcards, quotes, stuff like that. So that shouldn't be a shocker to anybody, but it's always good to point it out. Our 16th tip of the day is, well, actually, let's ask this question. How many of you have had latency issues in NetSuite? Okay, why aren't all your hands up? Because at some point or another, I'm sure everyone's been annoyed with it. One of the things that happens when you build an instance of NetSuite, it's very quick from out of the box, but as you add more and more customizations, it tends to get slower and slower, especially if you have a lot of big scripts, workflows that need to update things, fields that have to populate, those kinds of things. One of the things we will do after we've done customizations is go look at the performance management. This is a place that it's actually a free tool. You do have to request it from NetSuite support or from your NetSuite partner, but it's free to use. And it will help you determine how long is NetSuite struggling, or how long does it take NetSuite to make this record or to save this record. And you can really start to pinpoint down, is this a NetSuite server issue? Like we need to look at evaluating another tier, or is this something that we can just handle the performance and move on, you know, or hey, our scripting's doing this, let's look at script optimization instead. Great way to manage your instance as time goes on. That was my last one. Any questions or comments on those? No? Right on. Thank you.